It's been 50 years now since the United Nations voted on a resolution equating Zionism with a form of racism. This article was posted 50 years ago yesterday. The United Nations vote 72 to 35 to term Zionism as a form of racism. Holy cow, how much things have changed since then. Here's the actual resolution. It states that, highlighted in yellow here, which most severely condemned Zionism as a threat to world peace and security, and called upon all countries to oppose this racist and imperialist ideology. Determines that Zionism is a form of racism and racial discrimination. I mean, it's pretty obvious if you're putting one race, Jews, above others, Palestinians and Arabs for that matter, as they want everything from the river to the river, is what they believe, what Israelis believe their biblical land is, then you're excluding a specific race because of that. Now, this resolution ended up getting repealed in 1991 during George H.W. Bush's administration. And the reason it got repealed is because there was a peace process going on in 1991 between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And George Bush felt that by repealing the United Nations vote, it would make the peace process at the Spain peace conference between the Israelis and Palestinians and Arabs more easier to facilitate. Take a listen to what George H.W. Bush said in 1991 regarding this UN resolution.
UNGA Resolution 3379, the so-called Zionism is Racism resolution, mocks this pledge and the principles upon which the United Nations was founded. And I call now for its repeal. Zionism is not a policy. It is the idea that led to the creation of a home for the Jewish people to the State of Israel. And to equate Zionism with the intolerable sin of racism is to twist history and forget the terrible plight of Jews in World War II and indeed throughout history. To equate Zionism with racism is to reject Israel itself, a member of good standing of the United Nations.
Good standing.
This body cannot claim to seek peace and at the same time challenge Israel's right to exist.
Let's just stop there. So, of course, this was back in 1991, and it was repealed because of the fact that they were pressured to do so in order to push Israel to attend this peace conference. Now, fun fact, and most people don't know this, but the Israelis hated George H.W. Bush. The Israelis hated George H.W. Bush so much because back in 1991, in order to facilitate this peace conference, George Bush did a few different things, one of which was not allowing Israel to receive a $3 billion aid package in loan guarantees until they stopped building Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. This outraged Israeli officials so much that one Israeli minister actually called Bush an anti-Semite and a liar. This is what George Bush had to say regarding the settlements that were being built in Palestinian lands. Take a listen.
That we do everything we can to give peace a chance. And with that in mind, I am going to ask every single member of Congress to defer just for 120 days consideration of this absorption aid package.
One of the determines that Israel had changed its housing and settlement policy. If they were no longer doing housing and settlements, we could feel go again.
Look, our settlement policy is well known, but I don't want to have any debate on this question now. Everybody knows the United States policy about settlements, and that policy is not going to change. And must do a better job convincing people and we'll.
So it seems that George Bush was pretty set on his settlement policy. However, the Israelis were not big fans of that. Harsh words in Israeli cabinet aimed at Bush. A session of Israeli cabinet held on Sunday. This article was posted on September 16th of 1991. Between the Bush administration and the government of Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir quickly gave way to unrestrained ill will, with one minister branding Bush an anti-Semite. It goes on, the outbursts highlighted the political passions aroused by Bush's vow to delay U.S. guarantees, for 10 billion, not 3 billion, as I said, in loans to house and provide jobs for Soviet immigrants flooding into Israel. Bush wants the guarantees held up until Israeli-Arab peace talks are well underway. Shamir says the guarantees have nothing to do with the proposed talks. President Bush is an anti-Semite and a liar, said one Israeli minister named without portfolio named by Shamir into the cabinet earlier this year. It goes on. So you guys definitely have not heard of this. Fun fact, during this time, the Israelis were enraged with Bush. I cannot overstate how upset they were. They called Bush an anti-Semite. They called Bush a liar because George Bush delayed these loan guarantees. A former Israeli Mossad agent, Victor Shafsky, then comes forward stating that the Israeli Mossad had a plan for assassination on George H.W. Bush. You don't need to take my words for it. Two U.S. congressmen at the time, Pete McCloskey and Paul Finley, came forward and stated that there was going to be an assassination attempt on George Bush's life. Take a listen to this clip.
And George Bush outraged the American Jewish community, if you'll recall, by taking a position that our aid to them, $10 billion, should be conditioned on a reasonable Israeli position toward a Mideast peace. Victor Ostrowski spoke out and said that the President of the United States is subject to the possibility of assassination by Mossad hit him when he goes to Spain at an international convention. By that willingness to speak out, he may have saved the life of the President of the United States.
So there's so much I can get into regarding this. I'm going to be making a full separate video on the assassination attempt of George H.W. Bush by the Israeli Mossad. I've previously done one on my social medias on Instagram and TikTok. What you need to understand is that Bush was so hated by the Israelis because of this aid package. They felt that by installing Vice President Dan Quayle, they would have a president in power that is more favorable to the Israelis than the Arabs. George Bush upset the Jewish community in the United States so much because of his position to defer the loan package. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, the Israel lobby at the time, went into overdrive trying to get Congress to approve of the loan package. George H.W. Bush at the time said he was against some powerful political forces. Take a listen to this clip here.
And I'm up against some powerful political forces, but I owe it to the American people to tell them how strongly I feel about deferral.
Are those powerful political forces ungrateful for what you've done so far in a peace process, and why doesn't the peace argument sell with them?
I think it will sell, but it's taken a little time, and we're up against a very strong and effective, sometimes, groups that go up to the Hill. I heard today there were something like 1,000 lobbyists on the Hill working the other side of the question. We got one lonely little guy down here doing it. However, I like this forum better, too.
So there you have it. Now, of course, there's so much more I can get into regarding this. I promise you guys I will be doing an entire separate video on this assassination attempt on George Bush. Let me see if I can just find at least one article related to this. Well, here's one. Because George Bush was delaying this loan package, this is an article I put into Google Translate so I can get you the English version. I got this actually from the Israeli archives. It was previously in Hebrew. Shamir says Israel will submit detailed requests of assistance to the European presidency. Because George Bush was delaying this package, Israel then started to ask the Europeans for a loan package in order to accommodate these new immigrants that were flooding from the Soviet Union at the time. So this is the situation that was at hand. Russian and Ukrainian Jews that were coming in. This is the situation that was at hand, and it's probably one of the least known about topics during George H.W. Bush's presidency. This is not to try to frame him as some sort of amazing guy that really benefited the Palestinians. Absolutely not. He's done a lot of horrible things, and he's definitely a controversial president. But what this is meant to say is that the Israelis were upset with him. He took a very mild position that told the Israelis just to wait. He didn't even tell them that they wouldn't receive the loan. He simply told them wait until after this Mideast peace conference. And it enraged them so much, Israeli officials came forward calling him an anti-Semite and a liar. Keep in mind that regardless and despite all of this, George Bush was still able to repeal and push for repeal of the UN resolution at the time equating Zionism to to racism. So that's it for this video. We took a little bit of a term from the UN resolution to this Bush assassination attempt, but thought you guys would find it interesting. If you want to see more of my content, make sure to click the subscribe button below. Would also really appreciate some super chats as well, guys. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.